Hi everybody, it's Rob here from Glas Data, and today I'm going to show you around our mapping system. So this is going to be a slightly longer video because there's quite a lot of things to cover. There's quite a lot of things that you can do in the mapping system. None of it's particularly complicated, but quite a few options. So I'm also going to be touching very briefly on different parts of the system, for example, mainly just the My Data section. If you want to know more about those specific parts, I'm not going to go into them in detail in this video, but there are other videos on YouTube. And if you can't find a video explaining what you're looking for on YouTube, then do get in touch, because either we can point in the right direction, or if it doesn't exist, I'm sure we can make a video for you. So, this is the mapping section. As you can see, it is the fifth icon down on the nav bar. If you hover over it, it looks like an orienteering symbol, and the little word map just appears when you hover over on it. And you can open up the menu to be bigger, and you'll see the word map there to take you to it, if that's where you're looking for. The first thing I'm going to do is when you first open up the maps, you're going to be automatically taken to our office location just by default, because you need to be focused in on somewhere. And probably the first thing you want to do is set it to your own home location. So if I demonstrate this, if I go to My Data, and if I come out again and go to Maps, you're going to see, oh yeah, we're automatically taken to the office location in Truro. Now, let's say that I want to set my location, and again, this is going to be something completely random, so I'm not going to be doing somewhere that is personal for obviously privacy reasons. But let's just say, for example, Butters Tor, and I think this is Bodmin Moor. So, I want to set my home location to Butters Tor. All I have to do is go into the settings section. Now, if you want to, if you don't have that side menu, just go to the search bar and click on that left-hand icon, and the side menu will appear. And then just go into settings, click Set Home, and then you can just click where you want the home location to be and click Set. And now, for example, if I go back into My Data, and then I come back into the map, you'll see we're going to get this nice zooming animation. It's going to take us and center us in on the home location. A pretty useful thing to do, and probably something that you're going to want to do, because you don't want to have to go searching for your home location every time you open up the maps. Now that brings me nicely on to how do we actually navigate around the maps. Now obviously you can zoom in and zoom out. You can do this either using the zoom in button on in the bottom right hand corner there, and the zoom out button, or you can just scroll your mouse and it's going to come in. Now, if you're on a laptop with a trackpad, again, I believe normally a two-finger scroll in and out action is going to kind of take you in and out like that. And if you're somewhere, if you get a bit lost in yourself and you want to go back to your home, we have a home location icon in the top top left-hand corner there, next to the search field. If you click that, it's just going to bring you back and zoom you into your home location. And we also have a current location. Now what this is going to do is it's going to ask your browser permission to actually know where you physically are, and it's then going to use an IP address, just an internet IP address, to work out your approximate location. So it's not necessarily going to be particularly accurate. So I'm currently based in Bristol, and if I click on that location, it's going to zoom me in to Bristol. And then if I click back on the home location, it's going to take me back to Butters Tor. There we go. Now, the other thing you can do is you can use this search field. So you have a prompt here, postcode field name lat long. So you can either search for a specific postcode, or for example, if I do BS1, what is it? Let's make something up for DJ, is that one? There we go. And if I hit search on that, you're going to see that it'll take me to that area in Bristol. Let's try a different one, EX169AA, there we go. This is going to take me somewhere near Exeter. Oh, there we go, somewhere around Bampton. And then if I hit on the home location again, it's going to take me all the way back to my original spot, Butters Tor. So there you go. You can also field name. This is if you've already imported fields into the maps, which we're going to be doing in a second, so that won't work at the moment. And then you've also got lat long, so if you have a latitude and a longitude that you specifically want to go to, you can paste it into here, and we should recognize it and take you to that part of the system. So the next thing I'm going to show you is kind of how do we add stuff to the system? How do we actually add fields, add sensors, add shapes, so that we have some interesting information. Now, the first thing, the kind of first concept to introduce you to is this idea of layers. So you'll notice in the top right-hand corner, we have this icon here, which looks like, well, two squares kind of overlapping each other. And if you hover over it, you're going to get an expanded menu. And by default, we have a default layer, which is switched on by default. So you need at least one layer active, and you're always going to have this default layer. It kind of just is the permanent thing that's going to be there. But it's quite nice, and you can add shapes to that if you want, but it's quite nice to be able to add fields and shapes and sensors and pins and things like that to each of their own distinct layers, so that you have a way of turning them on and off and categorizing them and grouping them. Now, how do we do this? The simplest way of adding stuff to the system is by simply drawing it on. And there are various ways that you can bring in things. So if you have existing shapes, I'll take you through that in a second. But the bottom option here is called the drawing tool. And if I click on that, you'll see we have a couple of options on the right-hand side there. So we can draw lines, we can draw polygons, that's a kind of free form. We can draw squares, and we can drop pins. So I'm going to drop a pin. I'm going to put it near the tour here. Let's put it just above. I'm going to call this temperature sensor, and that will come apparent why I'm doing that in a second, if I can spell. And I'm going to add it to the, so by default we only have the default layer, as you can see there, but I'm going to create a new one. I'm just going to call it sensors. And then I'm going to hit save. And now you'll notice if I hover over the layers, we now have a sensors layer. And if I right click on this and I hit edit shapefile, you'll see that we now have the name temperature sensor, the layer is in the sensors layer. And also I can do things like I can set the style. If it's a pin, which this is, it's a single point, these settings aren't going to have any effects because this is specifically for boundaries, fields, polygons, but you can modify, for example, the color. You can make it yellow, or in this case, I'm going to make it a red sensor. There we go. Or white, no, a red sensor. That's nice and standing out. And then I'm just going to save that, and you can see we now have our own custom style. So you can customize it and really kind of make it your own if that's what you want to do. Now I'm also going to add a field or a shape to the map, and I'm going to sort of draw around this interesting shape here. So I'm going to go back to the drawing tool. I'm going to hit the polygon option. I'm going to start on this corner here, and I'm just going to draw the edges of this shape, kind of like a field. And then I simply click. You'll see that the mouse is normally across, and then it becomes a kind of hand when you go over your last point, and that's going to finish off the shape. And then we got some information here. So we're going to call this one field 1, and I'm going to add it to the fields layer. You can see that if we have multiple shapes, you can get quite complicated. You can have a single field made up of multiple shapes and all that sort of thing, which is quite common if you're importing from other systems. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because it gets overly complicated. So for now, I'm just going to keep it simple. But you can name each individual shape. So if you had top corner of a field, bottom corner of the field, the wet patch of a field, a stream running through it, for example, you could have them all here. But you're also going to get information about this specific shape. So it's 11.82 hectares, and the boundary is 1,177.61 meters. And you can obviously change the color here. So let's make this a lurid pink. There we go. Maybe a bit of transparency, a bit more transparency. There we go. And then you can also change the width of the border if you want as well. Quite like it a bit thicker actually. There we go. And then if I hit save, you'll notice now that we have a new layer called fields. And we also have this information. If I zoom in on this information, you can see it's called field 1, and it gives you the area and the boundary. So again, quite useful if you're looking at again, it's not going to be as accurate as walking around the edge of it, but it's going to be relative. It's going to give you a good idea about kind of the area and the size and the shape of that field. Now, what does this mean? Now that we have two different layers, well, I can switch them on and off and have a look at them as I want. And this is quite a nice way to compare and see how things interact. So if I turn off the sensors layer and hit apply, you'll see we now have the field and no sensor. And if I turn off the fields layer and put the sensors layer back on and hit apply, you can see we now have the sensor back again and no field. And then if I hit the field, we can turn them both back on again. So really easy. And quite a nice way to organize things. There's a couple of other settings. Now that we've got some shapes in different layers on the map. There's a couple of other settings you can tweak. So if we go back into the settings section, there's two other aspects I haven't shown you here. One is just the map style. I'm not going to go into all of them right now, but you can just see all the different styles available. The default one is the outdoor style. And then we've got this fixed field labels. Now, there's a couple of things here. First of all, you can just simply turn it off and hit save, and then you're not going to see this information. If you hover over it, you'll see that the dialog appears, but you're not going to have a permanent label on the map. So if you don't like that being there, you can simply turn that off. And the other thing is that you can set the level at which these things appear and disappear. So the default level is 15 zoom. Now, if I zoom out, you'll see that at point, it disappears. And that's quite important because, for example, if I set that to be a low value, you'll notice we've still got it. And if I continue zooming out, we now have a very small field on the map. We have this very large area that's kind of overlapping a lot, which can be a little bit unpleasant. Now, if you want to see all this information at this level, then you can set that to be very low. But by default, it's kind of probably not the best thing, because if you've got lots of fields, you're going to have lots of overlapping pieces of information. If I also set this to be the highest level and save it, for example, if I now zoom in, it's not really going to appear at all. In fact, it's not going to appear at all. So we suggest that you kind of keep the default level of 15, because then when you zoom in, you're going to get this nice information. It's quite readable because you've got a background color. And as you zoom out, it'll just disappear so that it can leave space for more information on the map. There we go. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is how we can now link information. So between actual numeric information to specific items on the map. Now, if I click on this field, you'll see we just get this dialog, could not find any data for this field. If I click on the sensor, we get the same thing, could not find any data for this field. So we know that this is our temperature sensor. We know that there is information from the temperature sensor, and we know that if we want to look at that information, we can come to the My Data section, and we can see that we have one topic here called external temperature. And if we click onto that, we have an asset called main, where all this information is stored. And if I go into the main section, you can see we've got all this, all these values here. Now, what if I want to link this main asset to that pin on the map? What I do is I right click, so either you can click on the more option here and go to link location, or you can simply right click on it and you'll get the same menu. Go to link location. Now you can see that this is already being linked with a different old location. Now this is actually something from a previous tutorial, so this pin doesn't exist anymore, so I can simply click unlink. And then what I can do, if I just reload it here, link location. And then if I search for temperature sensor, and then assign location, there we go. So now we should have changed, if I right click on this again, link location. Yes, there we go. So we've now changed the location of this particular asset. Now, if we go back to the map, I know that doesn't probably mean a huge amount right here, but if we go back to the map itself, and we're going to be zoomed into our home location, and if we zoom in a bit further, and if we now click on this sensor, you can now see that we get a dialog telling us which assets this sensor has been linked with. Now, it's quite important to understand that you can link any sensor or any asset with any other location or shape on the map. So for example, if you have information about field 1, you can link all of that information to that field. If you have multiple sensors at the same location, you can link them all. So what you'll end up with is a list of sensors that you can scroll through to have a look at that information. Obviously at the moment we only have the one, so if I click on that single one, what it's going to do is it's going to open up a bit more of a dialog here, and it's now going to show us those values. So for example, we get a little chart showing that information, and then if we click on review data, we're going to be taken to that specific asset, and if we go into it, we'll be able to then see the actual values. So I hope that makes sense, but it's essentially a way of organizing which information is shown on which sensor or which shape inside the map. Now, the last thing that you might want to do is to actually bring in information from various third parties. Now, for various privacy reasons, I don't have any shape data with me now, but I'm going to take you very quickly through how to do this. So the first way you can do it is by using our shapefile importer. You'll notice that we have another section here at the bottom which is called Tools and Integrations. and we have currently have three mapping integrations. If you go to Shapefile Importer, you'll need to actually visit the tool shed in order to activate this, and it will take you through to all the integrations that we have. So I want to add the Shapefile Importer to my account. So now if I go back to the maps, and it's going to load up, you'll now see that we have a nice icon next to it. And if I open it up, we're going to get this dialog here. Now what this allows you to do is to import specific shapefiles. So let's say that you have another program, for example ArcGIS, which allows you to export information from it. You can then import it into our system. You need the .shp file, the .prj file, and the .dbf file. And there is a maximum size limit as well of 5 megabytes per file. This should be relatively straightforward, but sometimes it can be a bit fiddly making sure that the other piece of software exports it in the right format. So again, if you're having any troubles with this, do get in touch and we should be able to help you out. The other way that you can bring in information is from the Royal Payments Agency. So again, if I view this in the integration store, and if I add that to my account, and if I then go back to the map, you will notice that I now have another kind of purpley icon next to the Royal Payments Agency. We have to, because there is, this is a public license, so we're going to have to agree to this as well. But once you've agreed to it, what you can do is you can add, you can enter your single business identifier, your SBI number into there per holding. You'll then be able to validate this, and then you'll be able to import land parcels, land cover, and also hedges. And what will happen is we'll connect with the Royal Payments Agency on your behalf, and we'll then bring that information into the map. And then you'll end up with all your fields as per the Royal Payments Agency, and you'll be able to link information to those fields, and you'll be able to draw things on top of it as well, and kind of just essentially organize all of your information on a map. So that's pretty much all there is to it in terms of mapping. Again, you can get quite complex with the amount of information, the numbers of things you can link. But if you're new to this, just kind of start with a few things, whatever you find most useful. And as you go along, you'll find probably that things get easier and easier and more self-explanatory. Anyway, have a good time playing around with the maps, and see you in the next video.